Thank you. Wow. Well, I just caught the end of the previous session, and it seems like today's going fantastic. We're going to be talking about how to define your own unique coaching style without reproducing the way you were coached, and also considering the needs of the modern athlete, and how to provide, an environment that's respectful and healthy and inclusive for the athletes in whatever context you're working with them. If we could start with introductions, maybe just a quick 1-minute introduction from our panelists. Matt, would you mind starting us off? Do I have to unmute? Miriam, do you know if I have to unmute panelists? Oh, there he is. Hi, Matt.
Nice, thank you. Hi. Thanks for the occasion, the opportunity. My name is Matt Whitcomb. I'm the head coach for the U.S. cross-country ski team. I've been with the team since 2006, which is too long to be in any one job, but I've been fortunate enough to have started out with development and coaching the juniors, and then moving up through the World Cup team and the women's team. And now the last several years I've been the head coach. So it's each 3 or 4 years has been a little bit of a different job, and I'm very happy to be here. This is probably my favorite topic, and I'm certainly here to learn as well. So,
thank you, Sara. Let's hear from you.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I actually started sport. I'm a synchronized swimmer, artistic swimmer, or I was, and I now coach. I started when I was 11, which was a little bit late, but I transitioned from gymnastics, so I had a little bit of a background. Started in Texas, moved to California to train, ended up making the 2004 Olympic team, going to compete in Athens. Coming back, I started my freshman year at Stanford University, where I did my undergrad. 2 weeks later, and was continuing to train to compete again in 2008 in Beijing. Got really injured, so left the national team track, left the Olympic track, and just continued and finished my college career. And then started coaching at Stanford as soon as I graduated. I coached there for 10 years. And then I also coached the U.S. national team, starting with the, babies. They were about 10, 11 years old, and I stayed with them until they were about 17 when I moved back to Texas. During that time, I also got my MBA and served on the board of directors for USA Synchro and on the Athlete Advisory Council for the United States Olympic Committee. And then since then, I've had 2 little girls and started coaching again, starting a brand new program at Texas Women's University in Denton, Texas. We're varsity, but we are starting from scratch, which is really interesting right now, recruiting during COVID and all of that. So very different experience, but very fun. And, I'll echo what Matt said. I'm just really excited to be here and hear from everybody else as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Lee, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hey, Valerie. Hey, everybody else and the listeners back at home, wherever you may be. Really excited to be here. Thank you, Miriam, for organizing this. I have a little bit probably of a different background to most people. I was on the junior national team in the UK for track sprint cycling. Realized I was rubbish and wasn't going to be a world champion. So went in a different direction, went into the corporate world, had my own real estate business, but knew something was missing from my life. So I was coaching part-time as a hobby. The first couple of fleets I coached became national champions. And I thought, maybe I should do this instead. And there was one particular moment in time where I was sitting in a velodrome watching a race thinking, I don't want to be a real estate agent anymore. So sold that business, went into coaching, culminating in running the Olympic development program for USA Cycling. So the track component of that, which was tasked with finding talent and getting them ready for the 2028 Olympics. Before I created this program for USA Cycling, they didn't have any talent ID program for track cycling. So obviously an important component that we're missing. That kind of blew up in COVID, and I've now gone on to what I really think is my true purpose in life, which is leadership coaching, emotional development, and men's work. So I run men's groups, I work with startups, kind of helping the leaders go from being fiery workaholics to people that can lead big teams and understand how to meet people where they're at. And that's me.
Thank you, Lee. And Robb, let's hear from you next.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be on this panel with everyone. Thank you, Miriam, for the invite. My name is Robb Taylor. I'm the head coach of the Auburn wheelchair basketball team. I've also got experience coaching the U.S. Paralympic team as the assistant coach of the U.S. men for the last 9 years. I just got back from Tokyo about a month plus ago, where we won a gold medal in Tokyo. I was with the U.S. men in Rio in 2016, where we won a gold medal in 2016. And then prior to that, I worked with the U.S. women Paralympic team in 2008 when we went to Beijing and won a gold medal there. So I've been very fortunate to have attended 3 different Paralympic games, have come home with gold medals in each of those. And then aside from coaching the Paralympic team, I am here at Auburn University, so deal with collegiate athletes on a daily basis. Before this, I coached a high school team. I've coached women's wheelchair basketball, and kind of been all around wheelchair basketball for the last 20 plus years. So my perspective is probably going to be a little different than some of the other panelists here, just with working with individuals with a disability. I myself do not have a disability, so that's a challenge as well, being an able-bodied individual in a disabled world. But it seems to have worked out so far with me, and looking forward to the rest of the panel and the discussion that we're going to have.
Thank you. Wow. Well, it seems like we have such a depth of expertise amongst the 4 of our panelists. That's going to be great as we dive into these questions. I don't know if we'll have time for everyone to answer every question. If you feel like you have something really important to say, please feel free to jump back, but otherwise I'll just start calling on folks. The first question we'll think about is, why is it important to take time to think about your coaching style more as a reflective practice as a coach? And Matt, do you mind going first?
I don't mind.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hillary. Great to meet all of you. For me, developing one's coaching style, I call it a philosophy. And I didn't invent this myself by any means. This was a consultant that worked with our team. He said, you all have a coaching philosophy, you just don't know it yet. And what I discovered is that developing my coaching philosophy allowed me to really focus in on some things that I was naturally good at. I wasn't trying to be some other coach that I had observed. And then it also allowed me to be more consistent from day to day. And I discovered that one of the things that is really disruptive for a team is when a coach shows up with an unpredictable mood or an unpredictable agenda. And I think I've slowly over the years discovered that delivering a predictable coaching philosophy from me is something that allows the environment around the team to relax. They know what they're going to get with me. Ballpark, I might bring some creative ideas to practice one day or to a dinner discussion, but in general, they know who they are getting. And that is that consistency really relaxes the environment.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Lee, do you have anything to add on why it's important to take time to develop your own coaching style?
Yeah, I thought I was going to, yes, thank you, Valerie. I thought I was going to blow this up a little bit and say, I don't have a coaching style. My coaching philosophy, to borrow Matt's word, which I really liked, was to meet an athlete where they're at. So I feel as a leader, my job is to understand what that athlete needs from me to get the best out of them and to be adaptable. And for that to happen, I have to be able to leave my ego to one side and not make it about me and instead meet them where they are. So that's how I see coaching and leadership is, how can I best support that person? And if they're not getting what they need from the relationship, I see that's mainly about me and what do I need to change to meet them. So that's how I think about coaching. How can I be what that person needs to achieve the best for them?
Interesting. And that's a great segue actually into the next question, which is the role of a sport coach and your main goal. It sounds like you're, you know what that is. But does it change based on who you're working with in leadership or sport, or is it just in general, would you say, the main goal of a sport coach?
The way I looked at it, so when we started the Olympic development program, I worked with an endurance coach that I knew. So I run the sprint program, he ran the endurance program. And our philosophy was anybody that came through our program left our program a better human being than they started our program. And that's how I view coaching. That's how I view leadership. That's how I view myself in the world. Like, how can I help everybody else be better without me needing to fix them? Like, I've got to stand for their own development and not force that upon them. So as I see coaching is how can we help people be better humans? And then the byproduct of that is hopefully they go on and create the greatest sport and achievement they can. But if we're thinking, right, I've just got to create Olympic champions, and that's my ego being projected on them that I need to make these people Olympic champions. And if we have a program of 40 athletes and 3 or 4 of them became Olympic champions, that would be wildly successful. So what's going to happen to the other 37? So that's how I see coaching and leadership, like just helping people be the best versions of them in the way that they need it, not even the way that I think they need it, but meeting them where they need it.
Yes, definitely. And Rob, do you have anything to add about your main goal as a sport coach? Or
Yeah, so
multiple goals?
No, I think my role as a sport coach it differs depending on what team I'm working with. So I think when I'm working with my Paralympic team, the goal is to win a gold. Like that's what we're going there to do, and that's what our job is. But when I'm coaching my team here at Auburn, I've got some athletes that want to make a Paralympic team or a national team. I've got other guys that just want to graduate, have a great, get a degree, have a great job when they graduate. So it's adjusting what the goals are depending on the team that you're working with. And, as Lee was saying, meeting your individual athlete where they're at and finding out what drives them and what motivates them. And then working with that within a team environment to make sure that we are still pushing towards the team goal, still trying to achieve a team goal. But again, understanding what everyone's hopes and dreams are, because they all don't want to be on a Paralympic team or a national team. So it's making sure that the guys that want to get to that level, that you're giving them that extra attention to help them get to that level.
Right. Well, I guess as a coach, you might have a main goal, but then also understanding what your athletes' goals are is very important. Sara, I know you've had a lot of experience with different types of athletes. How do you adjust your coaching style, either based on age or level, or working with individual athletes, with a team? Can you tell us more?
Yeah, so we are very much a team sport. And when I was in the thick of it at Stanford, when I was, going back and forth, I would coach Stanford in the morning and I would coach our national team in the afternoon. And then that was when they were older. And then during the summers, I would work with the younger kids. And so I felt like I was constantly adjusting to the athletes, but that was really fun for me because I think it keeps you fresh. I think it gives you great perspective. And it kind of challenged me, right? I had to understand the different groups, but then within the teams, we have individual events. So we would have a solo and a duet. A solo obviously is one person, a duet is 2. So then understanding both of them individually and then how I can get the best out of them may be different from the one person, different from the team of 8. And I think in college, it's very different. Like Robb was saying, we're a sport where most athletes after college are not going to go on to the Olympics or go on to do our sport professionally. There just aren't that many opportunities. So, with the national team athlete, I might push them harder and their goal might be, I want to go to the Olympics. Some of them don't. Some of them just want to swim in college. And so, figuring that out. And then in college, understanding that they want to go on and have a great career. So coaching them more along the lines of here's how you're going to make a connection with your professor. Here's how you need to, go and address them at the beginning of the semester. And here are things you should say. Here's how you should write an email to them that's going to be professional. Going along those lines with my college athletes versus more of the just sport. Let's be a little bit more intense on the sport aspect with the national team athletes. So I think really figuring out how you read them and what their goals are, just, kind of like what everyone has said so far.
Right. And Matt, you've been coaching a while. I don't know if you said since 2006, and different groups. How has your coaching style maybe shifted or changed in that time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think back. I think I've become more humble, and I think I am generally a humble person. But I can remember back on my first 4 years, and as Lee said, you get a national champion or two in there, and you start feeling really good. And this might be a particular response that men have. The ego starts to grow a little bit, and I remember thinking how easy it felt. And then you start coaching the national team and you realize that it's like 60% failures instead of 80% successes. And so I needed to really start to focus in on the individuals and learning about the individuals. And I think there are several ways you can do that. You can be a good listener. That's probably the best one, and pay attention the difference between Keegan to Jesse, because the same coaching style doesn't work for either of them. You can talk with their former or current club coaches and see which sort of traps and that they fell into. And then lastly, and I think the most important thing is you can ask the athlete. Feedback is generally with coaches, I think at least young coaches, a one-way avenue. And I think it's very important for us to have feedback be a two-way street. And I think when the athlete realizes that we are asking them for feedback, they're much more likely to be able to absorb our feedback. So making sure that's flowing both ways. And that's how we become better coaches too. It's the athlete's job in that case to make us better. So it's grown a little bit in that regard.
Absolutely. Well, I think everything that's been said, it seems like all of you as coaches try to build trust with your athletes and understand them on a human level first, which is so important. Let's jump to our next question. How do you deliver feedback to athletes or people you're coaching? Lee, do you want to start us off?
Oh, I love this. This is one of my favorite topics. I actually have a presentation developed from my experience as a sports coach to the business world, and it changed a bunch of companies, because on the whole, we're really bad at giving feedback. And I'm going to hold my hand up and say, I was terrible at giving feedback. I would go into a velodrome and I could see everything that everybody was doing wrong. And I thought it was my job to go and tell them. And I thought I was being helpful. Like, hey, let me tell you, everything you're doing wrong, I'm being so helpful here. And obviously that was not received very well on the majority of occasions. Even though I had good standing in the community, it still wasn't received very well, because I hadn't created the opportunity for people to be open to it. And most importantly, I hadn't asked if they wanted it. So my feedback model now is, first thing, check in with that person. Are they open to feedback? And if they say no, don't give them feedback. Unless it's absolute mission critical in the middle of a game or something, and you've built that trust beforehand. But always check in. Are you open to some feedback right now? Think about when you're going to give feedback. Often as coaches, we can get emotionally charged ourselves. We want to give feedback immediately. Our feedback comes from an emotional place, and the athlete is still too emotional to hear it, especially if it's feedback after they've done something. So think about when you're going to give the feedback. And the first thing I start with is, what did they think of the situation? Because there's nothing worse than coming in, telling somebody how, what they've done wrong, and then them already going, well, I know I did that wrong. So let them express that first. Let them have ownership of it. Then if you need to add anything to it, do. And lastly, make sure that you're spending as much time talking about what they do well as you are about what they're not doing, how we want to do it. Because it just becomes so easy to talk about. We're so analytical. We're seeing it. We want those 1% opportunity gains. And we're going, here's the 10 different things we need to be doing differently. What's the stuff you're doing well? Because all the athlete hears then is, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough. I'm a failure, I'm not good enough. So it's our job to create the feedback loop that's really powerful on what they're doing well, because that actually motivates people much more than what they're not doing well.
Yes, absolutely. Rob, do you want to add on to that, how you deliver feedback to your athletes?
I mean, I think Lee kind of touched on a lot of the big stuff there. And I know when I first got into coaching, it was, just go in and yell at them all the time. And then they gotta fix what you're doing, right? But that has definitely softened over the years. And, I think back to the whole praise in public and criticize in private. So that way you are highlighting the things that they're doing well out on the court or whatever the playing field is. in front of the team. And then when you do have a critique for them, it is off to the side and one-on-one. And when you're delivering that critique, it's still trying to find a positive in what they're doing. Just the other day, I had an athlete come into my office that he always comes to me after practice and asks for feedback about, hey, how do you think I'm doing in this? How do you think I'm doing in that? And that certain practice, he criticized one of his teammates in the middle of the play and just said, hey, you shot too fast. And I said to him, I said, hey, Jack, so tell me the difference between these two statements. Hey, you shot too fast, and let's get another ball reversal in there. I said, which one's the negative statement? And he said, well, the one where you say you shot too fast. I said, okay, but both of them get the same point across, right? He's like, yeah. So then that's the way that you need to communicate with your teammates on the court. You know, for basketball, the most important thing is to have trust in your teammates and to have trust that they're going to be doing the right thing. So it's providing that feedback, but providing it in a positive way. So you're not shaking the trust, you're not shaking that player out of what they're good at. So he tried that the next day and he saw positive results from it. So I think that's where it goes to tweaking your message just a little bit to make sure that there's still a positive spin in it. So that way you're not losing any of that trust between you and a teammate or you and an athlete. And that'll just help strengthen the relationships that you have.
Yes. Sara, do you want to add as well? I know artistic swimming has a lot of feedback involved.
Yeah, so I think, when Lee was saying the first thing I do is ask them how it felt, that is exactly what I do. I think coming up in the ranks, oftentimes we just got bombarded, right? We were just told all the time what wasn't correct. And, you need to fix this, you need to fix that. And so I tried to kind of, when I started coaching, I didn't want to be the coach who was just constantly giving the negative. I don't think that I have to be positive all the time, but, I think that you can find a good balance of both. And so the first thing when an athlete comes up from underwater, when they finish their routine, they get out from a swim during competition, the first thing I always say is, how did that feel? Tell me what that felt like for you. Because a lot of times I find too, if I say, hey, and I give them a correction, they can't start to feel what it feels like to be correct or incorrect and make those corrections on their own. So a lot of times if I say first off, what did that feel like? Then it forces them to start to, try to correct themselves and feel what is correct and what is incorrect. Especially my college athletes, I find a lot of times they come from clubs where they've just been corrected all the time. And so as freshmen and even sophomores, when I'm asking them, what did that feel like? They have no idea how to even explain what their body felt like in that moment. And so it takes a little bit of time to change that and to have them actually think about things while they're doing it and not just going out and trying to correct what you've told them was right or wrong. So I really, I agree with Lee on that. It's exactly the first thing that I do.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think encouragement and, checking in with the athletes is always a great way to keep that respectful relationship between coach and athlete going. Matt, can you tell us more about how you build respectful relationships with your athletes?
Yes. I think it goes back to a little bit of what everybody has said, which is listen and provide some balance between constructive criticism and positive feedback. I think it's very important to give the athletes some autonomy in their direction. In fact, I like to kind of think of myself as the assistant coach and the athlete as the head coach. Because if autonomy makes an individual feel purpose, and purpose makes an individual feel happy, it's usually our happy athletes that succeed and win. It's fairly random that an unhappy athlete is succeeding in races in our instance. And so that sort of autonomy might have something to do with like what Lee or Sara or Robb was saying, like when you ask them, how did that feel? Or ask them, what are they working on first before you go and start to control the whole session? That's autonomy. It's really simple. And I think we also try and do it from the team perspective. We debrief, and this is something that we picked up from the Navy SEALs, where after every mission, even if it's just for 3 minutes at 4 a.m. and they're starving and freezing, and the last thing they want to do is talk, they debrief. And when you start from the team level, providing feedback, we always make sure to ask, what did we do well? Start with that just to kind of have a soft launch. And then what can we do better? And people are generally very respectful. And it just sort of opens up the culture of feedback being free flowing on the team. If you address it as a team, at least weekly, maybe we'll have something that goes wrong at a practice, and I might stand up at lunch if we have an appropriate space and say, all right, I'm aware this happened. How can we do better next time? The debriefs can be 2 minutes. They can sometimes be 2 hours if it's a team culture document that we're working on, but that's how we do it. Try and provide that autonomy to the individual and to the team.
Yeah, thank you. Rob, do you do anything similar, or what do you incorporate into your program?
Yeah, I think for us, a lot of the relationship building, at least here at Auburn, it starts when I'm recruiting a kid. I think that's when you really start building a relationship with someone. And that's their way of gauging how they can interact with me as a coach. And then once they get here, I do have weekly meetings with my guys. And it's not necessarily just to see, hey, what's going on from a basketball standpoint, but it's to touch base on how everything else is going, from school to family to friends and anything else that they have going on. So that way you've got a relationship that's not just built on the sport, but it's a relationship that's a vested interest in what's going on in that individual's life. And even from a US standpoint, that was one thing that we initiated even before COVID hit. But when we were on hold for COVID, we would have weekly calls with one-on-one calls with our guys just to make sure that the relationship was still there. And if they needed anything from myself or any of the other staff members, we were able to provide that even during lockdown and guys spread all over the world. So I think that relationship piece starts early, and then you have to be genuine with those relationships and carry on those conversations on a regular basis, and not do it when things go wrong, or not do it when you're in a tough situation. But understand that when things do go wrong or you are in a tough situation, it's the relationships that you've built from day one that's going to help make those situations not as tough or not as difficult.
Absolutely. Sara, do you have anything to add about how you build respectful coach-athlete relationships? I know you already mentioned how you address different levels of athletes, but maybe speaking more to college, since that's who you're working with now.
Yeah, so I think what Rob said was really great, not addressing them or not trying to form those relationships during the negative times, but making sure that they're established by that point, right? So that when those times hit, then you have something to work with, and you can really dig deep. You know, I think we do monthly meetings, and then I just check in with them that are scheduled. And then I check in with them, you know, very casually every week. I try to just shoot each one of them a text. Hey, how's everything going? Or, you know, saw you did this really well at practice today. Or maybe I'll just, you know, see them walking out of the locker room or walking in the hallway. One thing that is a challenge for me, both at Stanford and at Texas Women's, and it takes every athlete about a year. I have an open door policy where I want them to come by. You know, I want them to come by my office and sit down. I want to hear about their personal life. I want to hear how they're doing in school, what's, you know, what they're frustrated about, what's going really great. You know, I tell them I want to share in your joys as much as I want to help support you in your challenges. But it takes every athlete about a year, maybe a year and a half sometimes, to understand I'm really genuine about that, you know. And right now, my challenge at Texas Women's is that I don't have any upperclassmen. I only have freshmen. So where, you know, at Stanford, I had upperclassmen to say to the freshmen, hey, she's serious. She's not just saying that. I don't have anybody to say that to the younger ones right now. So just trying to really get that point across and get them to buy into that. But yeah, that's how I try to build it. You know, trying to celebrate in their joys and have fun with them. I always say, you know, I want to have a fun practice too. It's not fun for me when things are not going well either. You know, I don't like to always be the bad guy. I want to have a little bit of fun along the way too. So,
of course. Well, I think it sounds like we all agree that caring about the athletes as people is actually, you know, more important. And then the secondary goal is helping them with their athletic careers and goals. So Lee, I think this question would be best for you to start off with. What can we learn from leadership and life coaching that we can bring into our coaching style and help us improve at the sport level?
Yeah, I think something that really resonated as others were talking here was how we partner with athletes. So instead of viewing ourselves as having to have all of the answers, instead partnering with the athlete and realizing they have the answers for themselves often, and our job is to empower those and help them. I often think of the analogy of, do you feed somebody or do you teach them to fish? And my job as a coach is to teach them to fish. So Sara was speaking to it really eloquently about, asking them to come back and starting to understand what's going on for them so they can critique themselves. I feel that really good leaders, especially in the corporate world, empower everybody else to be a leader so that leader can step out and the whole thing still works. And I haven't done a lot of team sport stuff. There's some team sport stuff in track cycling, but it's not like some of the others here are doing. I would imagine if I was doing a team sport, that's what I'd want. I'd want a bunch of leaders on the pitch so that me as a coach can step back. And my view was I could send my athletes to a competition and they would be completely fine without me there. And it might be a bonus if I'm there and I might see something that they can't, but they should be able to function to the fullest of their ability without me there. Once I'd got athletes to that level, that's where I feel like that was where I was really doing my job. And now we're discussing the partners, what's the best thing for them and what do they need to do next and what are they missing? And it goes back to having built the trust beforehand that people were talking about so well, of knowing that you have their best interests at heart. You're not just doing this so that you can hang up a medal on the wall. You're doing this so that you can help them be the best human beings and then the best athletes, and then the results will take care of themselves from there.
Yes, and Robb, can you maybe add a little bit about your inspiration from leadership and life coaching and how you bring that into your program?
Yeah, so for me, a little bit my background and my education, I got a master's in counseling and psychology. So for me, it's drawn on some of that, has really helped me out from a coaching standpoint. I think that's probably when my coaching style really changed and switched, was when I had some educational classes and had some more background in it and understood more of the beliefs and the sciences behind how to get across to someone, how to talk with someone, how to improve relationships. And I mean, it's not only helped me out coaching, but you can ask my wife, it's helped us out from a relational standpoint. I don't yell at my kids nearly as much as I used to, so they love it too. But it's just having that kind of background, I think, has helped from a coaching standpoint. And it's taking some of those thoughts or beliefs that life coaches have in terms of how they help guide you and point you in the right direction to help you with the ultimate goal of your life, implementing that in the sports world as well. So now not only are we trying to make baskets and win games and win championships, but it's also about the next level too. And what are you doing outside of sport? What are you doing after sport? Because at some point, every athlete, their sporting career is going to come to an end. So what's that next step look like? And I think as coaches, if we've kind of got that in the back of our mind, we can help with that as well. And then when they do retire, if it's after they've moved on from our team, they can always come back and be a sounding board. We can be a sounding board for them to help them transition from being an athlete to being a civilian again.
Yes, definitely an important aspect of the athlete's soul mission. And Matt, do you have any particular inspiration that you bring from leadership and life coaching into your sport coaching?
Yeah, thanks. I do. I had to ask Miriam for a little help on this question because I haven't had a lot of experience with life coaches, but I have with sports psychologists. And I realize that those of us who are good at our jobs, we're all sort of the same thing with a different title, and sort of it's a guide rather than an expert or a real leader from the front. But just in the last 3 minutes, you hear with 3 different speakers, you hear the words trust, safety, and connection. And connection being probably my favorite of all those words. But you'll start to stumble upon those words if you read anything about tribal living, hunter-gatherer days. And the tenets of those tribes, those community ways of living are really the ways that we find ourselves operating when we are operating well. Unfortunately, the world is really pushing us into these isolated ways where we are expected to succeed on our own. And I think we have to really combat that, because if there's a 10 or 15 or 20,000 year gene lag, that effectively means that we're not responding to adaptations from genes when the world just suddenly became modern. We are still responding from genes that were developed from our ancestors thousands and thousands of years ago. And so when we feel unhappy because we are isolated, that's a genetic response. And when we feel happy after a team cheer or something like that, that's because we have a group around us that makes us feel safe. And if you didn't feel safe, you were eaten. So I like to think about how things happened and how they developed that way. I just sort of accidentally stumbled upon some cool readings.
That's very interesting. Sara, I guess we'll finish up with you if you have any inspiration to share.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to Matt. I don't have a lot of experience with life coaching, but I think going through my MBA program, like Robb, really changed my, and even though it wasn't psychological or things like that, it changed the way that I looked at leadership and what makes a good leader. I think in my early coaching days, I thought giving them the corrections like we were talking about, really nitpicking it, looking at the details and trying to just get the best athletically out of my athletes that I could. Once I went back to school and worked on that stuff, we did a lot of classes on it. I realized that, the better you make everybody around you and the positives you can pull out of them, it's going to make you better as well. So trying to cultivate that in the team, and get everybody to understand, like, hey, if you don't have to compete against this person every single day and try to be better than them. If you help them and encourage them, they're going to make you better as well. You're going to continuously give to one another, and helping each other find challenges outside of the pool and outside of practices that are going to make all of you better. So, we do big pushes to do community service and things like that, trying to give back in order to make ourselves appreciate the things that we have and better. So, I think it's shifted as I've been in coaching longer, and I think now I'm better at it, but I'm continuing to try to learn and improve upon that still. So.
Well, I think it's wonderful, all the expertise you guys shared with us. It sounds like you all have fantastic programs, and I think it's being open-minded as a coach and being willing to reflect on your coaching style just benefits the athletes that you're working with so much. So thank you all. Thank you, Miriam, for having me host this session. I'm not sure what's up next. There she is.
I'm back. Thank you all of you for participating, and I feel definitely super inspired for the weekend and the rest of the weekend after this. Like, this was amazing. Very exciting to hear coaches speak so positively about their profession, and also to hear Robb ready to help his athletes transition. We're gonna hire you for athletes. So, but having said that, yeah, thank you so much for joining and taking the time to share with us, Val, for moderating the panel. We will be back tomorrow with our session 3 and 4 of the Feed the Soul Summit. More discussion on career preparation and then identity and athletic retirement. So we're shifting a little bit tomorrow. But thank you to all of our participants and Michael for moderating the chat and helping out put this event together. So I'll see you tomorrow, and thank you to all of you.